Right, so hello, welcome back for our Barocci talk. So Rose and I wanted to introduce a little bit more variety in this series because we've done a lot of painting. So the previous one we did on candles, these we're going to do on stained glass, so just to mix it up a little bit. And next month we're going to have Notre Dame de Paris with Rose. So it's almost like a two-parter. So we have York Minster today, specifically the stained glass, and then Notre Dame next month. So I have to admit, I do not know a lot about this topic. I almost did the master's degree in stained glass conservation at York University, but for different circumstances, I ended up not doing it. So if I had done it, I could say I'm an absolute expert in this, but because I haven't done it, I am not an expert in this. So what I've done is I've gone to the expert, or certainly one of the people who knows most about the Minster, and the Minster stained glass in particular, which is Sarah Brown. She's the director of the York Glaziers Trust. She's a senior lecturer in the Department of History of Art at the University of York, and also the director of the master's degree. So what I've done is I followed her book from, I think, 2016, 2017, Stained Glass at York Minster, and I've basically based my presentation on it. So if you're interested in finding out more about the stained glass at the Minster, I do recommend the book. It's quite easy to follow. It gets a bit confusing sometimes with this window and this window and this window, but it has a very handy map at the start, so if you get lost, you can find the number of the window here. So it is a really good book to start with if you're interested in the topic. So, first of all, let's pray. Father, are you okay to do the honors, please?
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O St. Lucy, you prefer to let your eyes be torn out, instead of denying the faith and defiling your spirit. And God, through an extraordinary miracle, replaced them with another pair of sound and perfect eyes to reward your virtue and faith, appointing you as the protector against eye diseases. I come to you for you to protect my eyesight and to heal the illness in my eyes. O St. Lucy, preserve the light of my eyes so that I may see the beauties of creation, the glow of the sun, the colour of the flowers, and the smile of children. Preserve also the eyes of my soul, for faith, through which I can know my God, understand his teachings, recognise his love for me, and never miss the road that leads me to where you, St. Lucy, can be found in the company of the angels and saints. St. Lucy, protect my eyes and preserve my faith. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Thank you very much. I obviously had a stained glass version of St. Lucy there. So, you might already know this, but York has the largest collection of medieval stained and painted glass in Britain, in the Minster and in some of its parish churches. York Minster has also the largest single collection of stained glass in the UK. It has 128 windows in total. They're mostly medieval, but ranging from between the 12th and the 18th century, most of them. So the stained glass was brought to Britain by the Northern Church. It was St. Wilfrid, sent for glaziers for the first Minster, which was started around 627. We don't have any remains from that first Minster. We don't even know where it was. But yeah, I had this quote by Nicholas Barker, who was, at least he used to be, I'm not sure if he is now, but he used to be a chairman in the York Glaziers Trust. So he gives the quote from Revelation that the heavenly Jerusalem was a translucent structure like unto clear glass, and that was the idea in medieval times. I mean, I would say it still should be the idea that the church on earth is a foretaste of the heavenly Jerusalem. So that was the first Minster. We don't have any remains from that. The second Minster, which is underneath the current one, was started by Bishop Thomas of Bayeux. Every time you see this little symbol, that means that person was a bishop. So Thomas of Bayeux was the first Norman archbishop, and there's almost no remains of glazing from this period in Europe, except for these prophets. So we have, I'm not sure if it's in that order, I think it's on this order, but it's David, Jonah, Daniel, Moses, and Hosea. This is from Augsburg Cathedral. So there's very, very few examples of stained glass from the late, so am I getting my centuries right? Late 11th century, early 12th century, because obviously something that is really fragile and it gets deteriorated. Other churches get built on top of earlier churches, and sometimes builders didn't even think of reusing them because they would have been already out of, let's say, the fashion of the time, so they would just like destroy it and like build another one. Yay! Not great for historians. So in 1152, Roger of Pont-l'Evêque succeeded Saint William of York as Archbishop of the city, and he was quite ambitious. He wanted to sort of legitimize the prestige of the North Province as a challenge to Canterbury. It seems like York and Canterbury have always been not a competition, or is it? So there was a big fire, and that was the perfect around that time, and there was a perfect excuse to add to the building and turn it into one of the most sumptuous early Gothic churches in Europe. Excuse the scribbles there, that's me. So it's quite difficult to find pictures, especially from the stained glass from the Minster online. There's not much that has been actually published. There is a website that I'm going to put on the YouTube video notes, which is like a navigator. So some of the windows all the photos have been digitalized, and you can see them and zoom in and out. And obviously it's like super high quality, amazing, but there's just a few windows. So let's say half of the pictures on the presentation are actually photos of the actual book because they are very high quality in the book, and I wasn't going to find them otherwise online. And this is a reconstruction from Stuart Harrison, and it's the book that has it. So I hope it's okay, the quality is okay. And yeah, so this is what the Minster at that time would have, like middle of the 12th century would have looked like, roughly. So what Roger of Pont-l'Evêque did was sort of from the transept, which is the bit in the middle, like the transept, like the short arm of the cross, to the east, sort of extend all that part of the building. Over 50 panels survive from this period. They were cut and reshaped by later glaziers, and they were set at a high level of the building so that they were more discreet. Because if you are modernizing your stained glass and you are reusing older stained glass, you don't want it to be too obvious. You just want to keep the old stuff like above, so that it covers the window. It looks sort of nice colors, but it's actually not that visible. This glass is of exceptionally high quality, both in the materials and in craftsmanship, and it's actually similar to others in France or Italy. So this is not just cheap glass. Like, the bishops are not cutting any expenses in this. They're going full on with getting the best glaziers that they can. And at least 6 cycles have been identified from the remains that we have from this period. The only Old Testament scene that we have is this one, which is the prophet Daniel in the lion's den, and Habakkuk is bringing him food, and there's an angel above. if you think that it's really dark and there's like lots of little bits of glass, that's because of the recutting, reshaping, then especially in the 19th century, but also before that, there's been several re-leading. So bits of lead have been added at different periods of time to stabilize the window, but obviously that makes the whole window darker and darker and darker. So that's one of the main problems that we have with stained glass. So most scenes from this period are from a cycle which is the Last Judgment. So you have some apostles here. We've lost some of the faces, as you can see, and these are trumpeting angels. Again, the one on the left has lost his head. And there are also these panels that you can see up at the top and at the bottom, painted or on stained glass as well. So this is called grisaille. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but it is uncolored glass basically that is cut into interlacing geometric shapes. And it was very popular for a long period of time. It was used wherever simpler and lighter windows were needed, and it's been associated with the Cistercian order because the Cistercians didn't have any images, didn't like images, but it wasn't only used by the Cistercians. It was, as we will see later, we will see a type of window that is called a band window, where you see alternating panels of uncolored glass and then colored glass, and that gave a nice balance of white light, let's say, that illuminates the space, but also you have the narrative power of the windows, and obviously the color, the richness of the color as well. This grisaille comes from French, and is because gris, how do you say grey in French? Is gris. So that's the idea, that because it's sort of greyish color, greyish tones. So it looks simple, but it is absolutely not simple. You have to have absolute precision on the cutting to achieve the perfect shapes. And actually you can see some of these shapes are already broken because of all the recutting and reshaping. So it's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's literally like a jigsaw puzzle. But 8 different designs from this period in grisaille have been identified. So this is also from the book, and I thought it was really interesting to see all the patterns. But yeah, if you don't like jigsaw puzzles, do not become a stained glass master, because you would go absolutely insane. I think that's also one of the reasons why I didn't do the masters, because I was like, I'm not sure I'm prepared for all that puzzling. And then this is one of the sort of the most spectacular ones from this period. It's a king of Judea. We don't know which king it is. It's all that's left from a tree of Jesse. And if we make this comparison, I'm sorry about the quality of the picture, but it's hard to get like high quality pictures of stained glass online in general. This one is from Saint Denis in France. Is one of like the most famous ones, and that one dates from 1145-55. The York panel is earlier than this one. Don't know the exact date, but it's from an earlier time. So at the moment is the earliest surviving known example of this subject of the tree of Jesse in stained glass in Europe. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sort of go, we're going to follow the book and go like bit by bit of the Minster. Okay, so we're going to start with the transept. So the transepts, like if you think of a cathedral, is basically like a cross. So the long arm is the nave, the short arm is the transept. In this case, like in other Gothic cathedrals, we have 2 transepts. So we have the main one here, and then we have the one between the choir and the Lady Chapel. So that's the smaller transept. So if we look at the main transept, that's the earliest part. That's where the earliest part of the Minster that's visible above ground is. So it's from the transepts and the crossing, and that was a reconstruction of the previous Minster that this Bishop Walter de Grey did during his time, 1215 to 1255. He was the longest serving and most influential of York's 13th century bishops. And yeah, the work started from the 1220s and continued until his death. It's also from this part of the Minster that we have the oldest or the earliest surviving stained glass that is in situ. So that is where it was and it hasn't been moved. Again, Walter the Grey wanted to enhance the power of the Northern Province and also provide a suitable burial and pilgrimage site for the recently canonized Saint William Fitzherbert, which would become Saint William of York. He died, like we saw before, 1154. He was canonized in 1227, and his shrine was firstly placed here at the east end of the nave, so just before the crossing there. So this is the 5-lancet window known as the Five Sisters. So if we go back to the plan, so in the south transept here, so if you see a church, I was going to say it's always, not always, but it should be, and they tried to in medieval times, so it's always like the entrance is always at the looking west, the altar always looking east, so you have north and south. So the south transept was altered by the opening of a large doorway and then the rose window, which is from a later building campaign. That's end of the 15th century, so we'll see it later. But the north facade is dominated by these 5 lancets. Lancet is these arches look like lances, basically. That's why they're called like that. They're very pointy and very thin. And that is commonly called the Five Sisters. And these, if you imagine you're a 13th century pilgrim, you would come from this door, from the south transept, and you would see in front of you on the other side of the cathedral, you would see this massive window. So welcoming you to the building. So it was conceived as a shimmering, like a cliff of shimmering silvery white glass, and this is grisaille, like we've seen before, but this is taken to another level. And I'm quoting from the book here because it's the best way to explain it. It's basically uncolored white glass cut into intricate geometric shapes and is decorated with trails of stylized painting foliage, like you see in the drawings, with only very limited amounts of accenting color. The predominantly monochrome aesthetic of the architecture is thus echoed in the glass. So that's the idea. So the architecture is already quite monochromatic. It is not completely monochromatic, but it's mostly, and then that's what you have in the window. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if they are doing conservation work now, because I know there was the idea of restoring the Five Sisters window, the same that they did with the west and more recently with the east window, but I don't know if they've done anything yet. Because when you go there, like this window, to be fair, like whenever I think of the Minster, I feel like meh, because it's very dark, and that is corrosion of the deterioration of the glass itself, deterioration of the lead, dirt, lots of mending leads that again have broken that all the patterns. But we have these colored illustrations that a historian called John Brown did in the middle of the 19th century. So you can see like the delicacy of the patterns is absolutely incredible. So you have those little dots of color, they're only enough to see the design, but the main idea is that it's a cliff of like basically silver glass. And again, the quote from Revelation, because that's what this is aiming to transmit. That's the message it wants to convey. we go to the chapter house now, so right here. So there were probably some years between the completion of the transepts, this part, and the chapter house, and we can tell by if you go to the Minster, the way you get to the chapter house is a little bit awkward. Like you go to the north transept and there's like a door that's sort of hidden there, and then you go through this corridor, and then all of a sudden you're in this massive space. So it's a bit like a winding entrance, and that can tell us that probably the builders who built the transepts weren't planning for this space as yet. So once this was done, they said, oh, now we're going to do this, and they had to come up with a solution that didn't break the symmetry of the building, but they needed some sort of entrance that was also dignified enough for a space like this. And in the chapter house is where, for the first time in the Minster, the stained glass achieves its full narrative potential. Sarah Brown says that this is the culmination of English polygonal chapter house design. If she says it, I believe it, and you should believe it too. So what's so special about this particular chapter house? That unlike others, it doesn't have a central column. And also the vault is wood, is not stone. It does look like stone, it's painted to look like stone, but it is not stone. And that gives us a massive uninterrupted space under an apparently unsupported vault. And this is where we are going to see these band windows that I was talking about before. We'll see it in a bit more detail now, but you see here, like you see the grisaille, so that's more like sort of clear glass, then there's a band of colored scenes, then there's another band of clear glass, there's another band of colored scenes. So that illuminates the building that was used daily for admin matters of the cathedral, but without sacrificing the narrative potential of the windows. And at the very top of the windows, these parts where you see all this sort of decorative I see this with Spanish is much easier for me to explain this, but in English I get a bit like I can't talk in Spanish. So let's say the top part of the windows where you see all the decorative motifs in the stone, that's what we call the tracery. I think that's the right pronunciation. Tracery, yes. So in there you see lots of heraldry, so the coats of arms of powerful benefactors or allies, and the whole building is full of heraldry, both on the windows and on the walls as well. So this was a twofold sort of idea. On one hand, you wanted to flatter the benefactors, so they give you the money for the cathedral, and on the other hand, the sort of their names, the coats of arms were there so that you remember to pray for them if you were in the chapter. But they are very useful for dating, because obviously you get lots of historical information from them. And from these coats of arms, the experts have come with a date that this chapter house was completed by 1292. It mostly has the arms of King Edward I and his court at a time when York was second capital city. It was it's like King Edward did a lot for the city. So I read a lot of praise of it. I was like, who was Edward I? Oh, he's the one from Braveheart. He was a really bad guy. But obviously, Braveheart is not historically accurate, so I shouldn't take my image of King Edward I from that film, because he's really awful. He wasn't that bad. The main function of the windows, though, is to honor the Minster saints in this space. So the east window, so it would be this one here. Used to have a cycle of Christ's passion and resurrection. All panels have disappeared since. They were removed in the 19th century and copies were installed, like really good copies. This is a 19th century copy. But in the 1950s, as we will see later, Dean Milner White, I think it was, decided to move them to the nave and put some other older stuff in, which you can argue, okay, he didn't want like 19th century copies, but he broke the narrative of the space, which you could argue is more important. So you can have different criteria for restoration and for these sorts of things, but yeah. So they used to have that window used to have the Passion of and Resurrection of Christ here, and then if we go like this, it was flanked on both sides by Our Lady, I think on the left, Saint Peter on the right, so windows dedicated to Our Lady, Saint Peter, Saint William, Saint Paul, and then Saint Catherine, and on the last window there were 5 saints. So they decided, oh, actually, we have these other 5 saints, so we're going to cram them all in one window, which were St. Thomas Becket, St. Margaret, St. Nicholas of Myra, St. John the Baptist, and St. Edmund. So this panel on the right is from the Our Lady's window and is the burial of Our Lady. There's a lot of re-leading there, but there's the apostles of carrying the coffin of Our Lady. And if you wonder about who chose these saints and not other saints, is mostly, well, Our Lady is an obvious choice. Saint Peter, the church is dedicated to Saint Peter. Saint Paul always goes with Saint Peter. They're the 2 pillars of the church. Saint William, because he had been recently canonized, and they wanted to promote his cult. And Saint Catherine is the patron saint of scholars, if I'm not mistaken. So that had a connection with the chapter house where, the chapter would meet and discuss. And the other saints, it was probably a matter of members of the chapter just having personal devotions for those saints. So we have the burial of Christ, burial of Our Lady. That's St. Peter in prison. He looks a bit bored there, but the angel is coming to get him out of his boredom. And these 19th century amazing drawings show in the colored figured panels. So first, the colored figured panels have sort of geometric frames, as you can see here, and you can see it more clearly probably here on the entombment of Christ. So they are versions of this shape here, which is the quatrefoil, which means 4 leaves, again comes from French. It's a decorative element that consists of sort of a symmetrical shape that has the outline of 4 partially intersecting circles of the same diameter. So it's almost like a 4-leaf clover, especially if you see it like this. And then there were lots of variations, and this is called, I think, cusped quatrefoil, because it has like little sort of lancets on the corners. But it's very common in Gothic architecture, but in stained glass it will slowly become outdated with sort of more architectural canopies that we'll see later. And then these drawings again are the grisaille panels that have, again, mostly is white glass, but it has all those little parts of colors, and the foliage is very naturalistic. Like you can actually recognize the leaves, like there are maple leaves, there's ivy, there's oak leaves as well, and each stem at the bottom of each window is growing from a mouth of a dragon. So there's lots of fun stuff to look at. This is from St. John the Baptist. We have Salome and Herodias with St. John the Baptist's head. And here there's St. Nicholas of Myra resurrecting 3 boys from a pickling tub. I didn't know about that miracle. It sounds funny. It shouldn't be funny, but it sounds funny. And now we see color only in the windows, but you have to think in the Middle Ages this space was painted top to bottom. The vault, which was removed in 1798 and replaced, was painted. The canopies over the stalls were painted and gilded. There were life-size figures of historical characters from York's past. On here, just above the door, there's this blind window, so tracery, and here, there were like life-size painted figures of York's bishops, archbishops, kings, and 13 statues of Christ and his apostles here, which were also painted. So you have to think of this chapter house as a jeweled casket. That was the idea. And then in the vestibule, so in the awkward sort of entrance, there are, on the windows, there are mostly figures of kings and queens, again, archbishops and saintly clerics that are associated to York. Here you see two unidentified king and queen, but most probably they are King Edward I and Queen Eleanor of Castile, if I'm not mistaken. Other figures, again, we see St. Thomas Becket, we see St. Edward the Confessor, so it's all saintly kings, queens, archbishops. And then the nave was built on top of the first Minster's nave, or second Minster rather, and it was expanded to have 2 aisles. So the bishop that started it was John Romaine, and then the building was extended into the I can't say reigns, can I? Because they're not kings. And the times of 2 of his successors, William Greenfield and William Milton. So Romaine was a Paris theologian. So he knew a lot about the French Rayonnant Gothic style, and that's what he wanted to replicate here. So we see like that flat wall surface on the west wall, very slender proportions, very large windows with lots of tracery at the top, and the space is flooded with light from all sides. So the Great West Window wasn't started until later, so it was like a later phase, and the vault wasn't installed until the 1350s, so there was a lot of leaking for quite a while. They even installed flying buttresses because they were going to build a stone vault, but there was a change of plan and actually it's a wooden vault, and the buttresses weren't finished. So the flying buttresses that you see now outside of the building, those sort of stone nerves, are actually from the 19th century. So when I read that, I was like, okay, I didn't know that. I was just slightly disappointed by that. I was like, oh, well, okay. They also could build nice stuff in the 19th century, so it's fine. I mean, this church is from the 19th century, so okay, fair enough. So all these bishops made generous gifts to the fabric and encouraged others to do the same by offering indulgences. Not sure what I think about this. You could take it in the good way, you could take it in the bad way. Like, there's always been a bit like some people who have been a bit naughty with indulgences. But so we have some important donors, like for example the Mollys of Mulgrave Castle near Whitby. They're one of the most commemorated families in the nave of the church. And in this window, we see a total of 6 members. We see 4 in this picture of the family. At the bottom of each light, that's what you call like each section, each vertical section of the window is a light. So at the bottom, you will see these members of the Molly family holding their shields up, just to show that they had enough to equip knights in the service of the king. And at the top they have some saints that are either their name saints or they have a particular devotion for them. This, and I'm sorry because this is actually from Wikimedia Commons, and it wasn't as good as I thought it was, the picture. But this is a window that was donated by Peter the Dean. He was Canon of York and Archbishop Greenfield's Chancellor and Vicar General. That's a mouthful. So he was a very powerful cleric. And this window was dedicated to the life and miracles of Saint Catherine. So, for example, I think this is Saint Catherine here is arguing with Emperor Maxentius, I think it is. I don't know how to pronounce his name in English. And he is being sort of given bad advice by this green demon here. Like this little bit of green is actually a demon that's whispering in his ear. It's really funny. So in this window, we see the earliest use in England of a new technique that was going to revolutionize stained glass. It's called yellow stain. And it's basically, I was going to read this from the book, but it's a bit complicated to read. But it's basically, instead of actual colored glass, you would mix certain substances to sort of tint white glass, and you could achieve different shades of yellow, and that would make the process easier. And you would use it only for certain places. So I don't know if all this yellow has been achieved with that, but it was mostly used for, like, for example, here we see in the emperor's crown, for example, or beards sometimes, or the parts of the clothes. So that was already there was silver stain, which they did with white glass to make it sort of more shimmery. But then they did it with yellow, and they also did it with blue and green at some point, I think. And this here also we see that stained glass as a mode of commemoration. So Peter the Dean here appears as a donor at the base of the window. He appears as the perfect image of a devout churchman, and he's basically asking the onlooker to pray for his soul. Apparently, he was described as a dreadful snake by the monks of St. Mary's. So, not sure he was that devout, I don't know. This is the penances window. You have, so the penances were Minster priests appointed by the Archbishop to hear the confessions of the Minster clergy. So have the martyrdom of Saint Peter on the left, and on the right we have one of the penances absolving a man, although he's holding a whip, so I'm not sure what's going on there. So he's whipping him and then giving him absolution. Don't want to give any ideas to any priests here. And here in the pilgrim's window, we have the crucifixion at the very top, and St. Peter as well. But the fun thing about these windows in the borders, so in the vertical ones, we have squirrels and monkeys with urine flasks. Apparently, this is a parody of the medical profession, so you see it here. And then in the horizontal borders, we have other parody scenes, and one of them is a monkey burial of Our Lady. Why would you do that? Like, it is still debated apparently by the experts. Like, what is this? Like, it looks so irreverent, but it's there. So it's comparable to the borders of pages of illuminated manuscripts. So the meanings of this, I think it escaped us. Like, I think there would have been a reason why, and the medieval man would have. Or person would have understood, but definitely it looks really weird. Hello.
I think I might have an answer for that.
Okay.
So urine was collected by doctors and bought by artists to make lead white.
Yeah.
And you would cover your lead pole with urine, you'd bury it underground for 12 days, and then you would, through the oxidization of the material, create the purest white pigment.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that the monkey bringing the urine to Our Lady, can't believe I just said that, is our way of saying this is the best we can do, the purest that we can give you.
Maybe. I still don't understand the burial though. Like, it is so weird. But no, that makes sense. But it is.
A monkey. And why is it a monkey? Still haven't got that question.
don't have an idea. I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, if the experts don't know, I definitely don't know. Also, monkeys are normally in art, at least later, associated with lust. Maybe not at this point. So, maybe not at this point, but later on in the history of art they will be. So I have no idea. These two panels are from the clerestory windows. So if you think they're if you think of the nave is like the uppermost windows at the very top, where it's actually quite hard to see them without binoculars. So that's what's called the clerestory, so the very upper level. So these ones have reused panels of unpainted glass and colored glass as well. It has a lot of heraldry, and here we have one of the resurrection of Christ. I really like the two soldiers that are there like, oh, he's not there anymore. He's just conversing with the angel there. And the one on the scene on the right is really interesting because it's one of two scenes depicting activities of a wine merchant, and this is very rare to find in stained glass. You don't normally find this sort of very common topic, like the activities of a lay person doing their job, basically. So these ones were thought to be earlier in date or less sophisticated than the ones that we've seen before, like for example these ones or these ones. Because of the big heads and hands and like really bright colors, not very delicate shapes, but the fact that they are set at the very top meant that they would be more easily visible from the ground with those big heads and big hands, and also they had to adapt to other reduced 12th century panels. So this is actually 13th century panels trying to look more like 12th century panels. And I find that idea really interesting, like someone from the 13th century trying to make it look old, but now for us it's like super old, everything. So it's quite fascinating. And then we have obviously the great west window. So that was the commission of Archbishop Melton. He gave, again, very generous gifts to the fabric. Also commissioned a new tomb for St. William, which was one of the largest shrines of its time. And this, like I said, corresponds to a bit of a later phase of building. And we can see it on the arches, like the different shape, the more like sort of, I don't want to say flamboyant, but more sort of curved rather than so vertical. So that, and obviously the tracery at the heart of York, as we know it, that comes from a later phase. This Robert Kettleborn, probably him. It's not sure, but probably he made this window. And Boston, I don't know how to pronounce his surname, made the two side windows on the aisle, so at both sides of this window. Those two windows were heavily restored in the 18th century, but the quality of the glass is absolutely excellent. We see in the first two registers, so here, so the bottom one and the one above, we see 8 of Bishop Melton's predecessors, including St. Wilfrid and St. William of York, and the idea is to present them as the apostles of the north, and they are legitimized by the 11 apostles above them. The thing is, you have 8 bishops and 11 apostles. Like, what do you do with the apostles? So I know the picture is not very high quality, but some of them have 2 apostles. So there's like 1 apostle, and then there's like the head of another apostle there. Like, hello. So that happens in these 3. So you can see, for example, in this one, that's one of the apostles there with a full body of the apostle, and then there's the other one like just like peeking through the side. And I've brought you the detail of St. John the Evangelist because it's one of the best preserved ones. And then the 3rd and 4th registers, so here, and not the tracery, just these two, have 5 of the joys of the Virgin Mary. So they have the Annunciation, the Nativity, the Resurrection of Christ, the Ascension of Christ, and the Coronation right here in the middle, and this is the one that you see here. And then the tracery has mostly decorative foliage and 2 figured panels with the pelican, which is a symbol for Christ, and the Agnus Dei. But as you see, it maintains the pattern of band windows. You have the more like sort of clearer glass here, and then the figures, and then the clear glass, and then the figures. So it's following the same pattern. And from these 2 workshops, from Robert and Thomas, I'm not going to say their surnames again. There are panels in other parts of the church and in the city parishes that seem to be related to them. So there are some narrative panels of unknown provenance on the life of the Virgin Mary in other parts of the Minster, and I've chosen this one of the Annunciation so that you can also see the transformation of English glass painting in the second quarter of the 14th century. So already new ideas were coming from Italian Trecento art, and whilst a direct contact with portable works of art like books, for example, is possible from Italy, directly from Italy, but it is more plausible that they could have had contact with the Parisian artists that were taking those influences from Italy. So here we have a comparison between this Annunciation, which could be from one of those 2 workshops that worked on the west windows, and this scene from the Hours of Jean Devaux by Jean Poussel, and that dates from around 1324-28. We see the York version is less perfect in terms of the art. The perspective is a bit off. Is much better in the book. But you can see this is called a doll's house, because it's like it's architecture, but the space is really small. If you see it, like Our Lady sort of constrained in a very narrow space. So it's like a little dollhouse where you have Our Lady and the angels, and you have the same sort of idea here. Although you see again the heavy relating there. I think that's God the Father just peeking through the window there. see what she says when she's going to say yes. And then we have, we've seen the West Arm, and then we have the Eastern Arm. So again, there's 2 building phases. There's the Lady Chapel is built first, and then the choir. So there's a point where the Lady Chapel and the transepts, like there's a gap in the middle. So I mean, it's really hard to imagine. Like there's like 2 bits of church. So I'm not going to give you all the dates because you won't remember them, and it's too much. They're in the book. Get the book. I can assure you, Sarah is not paying anything for me to say this. It's a really good book. But yeah, so sort of later 3rd of the 14th century, and that's for the Lady Chapel, and then the end of the 14th, beginning of the 15th century for the choir. We have to take into account there's the Black Death outbreaks, several of them. First one in 1349 and as later as 1375. So lots of people died in York, both in the clergy and obviously in the workforce. So architectural projects across England were being delayed. Stained glass production was massively reduced. But this man, John Thoresby, was very energetic, very ambitious, and what he did first is he finished the nave, because the nave didn't still have a vault, and it was leaking massively. So he did that first, and then he got on with the Eastern Arm. So he told the Pope that, well, we need a place, a proper place to celebrate the Mass of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Therefore, we need this really big Lady Chapel. And then the old choir is too homely for the new nave. The new nave is so grand. We need a proper choir to go with the nave. He was very generous in his own gifts. He also encouraged others with indulgences. And work was done very speedily until his death. Then it dramatically slowed down. The windows... Oh my goodness. Was that the alarm again? Okay. So the windows were started to be glazed when he died. Windows were started to be glazing with reused glass from unclear locations. Only in 2 windows there are remains of the first face of the Lady Chapel, and one of these is this one. We see St. John the Evangelist on the left and St. Edward the Confessor on the right. And this one has something called stuck-on jewels, which are pieces of glass that are attached to the window with fired glass paint to resemble precious stones on the garments, and that they are obviously on like a relief, so with a relief quality, so that makes it look really, really beautiful. Just trying to find one here. I think these ones, for example, here, the mantle of St. John, these would be pieces of glass sort of superimposed on the glass to give that sense of shimmer and relief. Unfortunately, the glass overall was of a much poorer quality and has degraded quite a lot. And obviously we have the Great East Window, is the biggest expanse of glass in the Minster, and the restoration took 10 years, from 2008 to 2018. And we know a lot about it. We know the contract with the glazier, which was John Thornton, to complete the work in 3 years. And he did complete the work in 3 years, which is incredible. He was responsible for recruiting and managing the workforce and sourcing the materials. The chapter was paying for all of that. He was a skilled glass painter. And he would do all the cartoons. So he did individual full-size drawings for over 300 panels of glass, all by himself, as specified in the contract. The painting and the cutting of the glass, that was something he would have delegated, but all the drawings he did himself, and he would supervise absolutely everything. So you have 3 main registers plus the tracery, and you have 9 lights. There's a lot of complex symbology on that, which I've got here. So the window is of 9 lights, 3 by 3. Well, is the tracery head has 144 openings, recalling the 144 cubits that measure the heavenly Jerusalem and the 144,000 witnesses described in the book of Revelation. Also, 3 times 9 equals 27, the number of Old Testament panels separated from the Apocalypse cycle by this gallery. So we have, this is the Apocalypse and this is the Old Testament here. So 9 times 27 produces 81, the number of Apocalypse panels. There's a lot of number symbology here, a lot of it. She says in the book, it's hardly to believe that it's a coincidence. It's obviously not a coincidence. So the subject in the East Window is very ambitious and very rare in stained glass. It basically comprises the history of the world from the beginning to the end. And at the very, very top is this panel of God, and I would say it's Christ, because she says God the Father, but I would say it's Christ, enthroned in the midst of the heavenly host that forms the tracery, with the book, with the blessing gesture on his right hand, book on left hand that says Ego sum alpha et omega, so I am the beginning and the end. And that's the whole message of the window. At the very bottom, right beneath Christ, but just like at the very bottom of the window, we have the donor, which in this case is Bishop Skirlow. You have this, his surname there. He was Bishop of Durham, but I think he was elected Bishop of York. Then Scrope was elected in his place, but he was actually a really nice man and he really loved the Minster, so he decided to donate this massive expanse of glass. I mean, how nice is that? I mean, you lose your basically your bishopry and you still do this. It's amazing. So from top to bottom, we have 27 scenes from the first day of creation to the death of Absalom, and that's happening here. And then we have 81 panels from the book of Revelation. So the ideas came from the theologians of the chapter of the Minster, obviously. The iconography came from different sources, but mostly from illuminated manuscripts. And then there are some historical figures at the bottom here. And those are, again, kings, bishops, saintly clerics, and those come again from different sources, but including St. Bede's ecclesiastical history. I thought my husband would appreciate me mentioning St. Bede here. So Thornton must have been a very good project manager, but he was a genius designer. He had to create a version of the Book of Revelation in pictures, 81, didn't have any fewer or any more, and he had to expand or compress the narrative according to his own, I guess, his own judgment, but also the judgment of the chapter, obviously. So some episodes are afforded several panels, like this one, for example, Christ, the elders worshipping God, and others are compressed into one. And we have to take into account the attention to detail from the text. So, for example, this one is St. John writing to the 7 churches. So you put 7 bishops like in a row, one under one canopy, each one under one canopy, and that's your 7 churches there. And it's a big church, but it has 7 bishops there. So that's how you do it. So this one is when the angel gives the book to St. John to eat, basically. You can see all the teeth of St. John. It's really funny. If you go on the link that I'm going to give you, you can see it in much higher quality, and it's really funny. So with this attention to detail from the actual text, we can sort of hypothesize whether Thornton actually had access to an English version of the Book of Revelation. And apparently there was the Bible was available in English in 1405, so it's not entirely impossible. He definitely knew the text very well. And this is the vision of the Son of Man seated among the 7 candlesticks. You have the quotes from the Book of Revelation there. You see the sword piercing his mouth, as it says in the text. The girdle is around his chest, like it says in the text. And because he realized that if he put the stars in his right hand, he held 7 stars. If he put the stars on his hand, you wouldn't be able to see them from the ground. So he cleverly arranged them among the candlesticks, but above the hand of Christ. So that is really clever to do. And he applied this silver stain. So this sort of I can't remember the name of the chemical, but it's something coming from silver that makes the face of Christ shine like the sun from the text. So is very, very attentive to detail. Obviously, the deterioration of the pigments, the mending leads, the fire, all in the 19th century, all were addressed during the restoration. So now we can see the window at its full power. And then we have the choir. So this is the second phase, in this period, and it was built between 1394 and the 1420s. So the same glazier John Thornton might have been very probably involved in this. The two windows. So if we go back, or if I show you in the book, which is maybe easier, see these 2 windows on both sides are these 2, and they rival with the great east and west window in the expanse of glass that they cover. So one is dedicated to St. William, other to St. Cuthbert, and there was quite a lot of issues with the building of the choir. The central tower collapsed to the ground in 1405. There was lots of political turmoil, and in general the choir was very damaged in the fire of 1829. The choir stalls were completely destroyed, but some of the windows survive, including these 2. So these are from St. William's window. So that's the miracle of the Ouse Bridge, when nobody died when the Ouse Bridge collapsed into the river. and these are some men bringing a paralyzed man to St. William's Shrine to be healed. So there are 95 scenes from the life of St. William, mainly events that occurred at his shrine. And in Sarah Brown's opinion, this is without a doubt the work of the same glazier that did the east window, John Thornton, even if we don't have documents to prove that. But because of the quality, the design, the expansion and compression of scenes, for example, the deaths of St. William's enemies, which were the Archbishop Murdoch, St. Bernard of Clairvaux, and Pope Eugenius III, are compressed in one scene, like they're all dying in their beds in one scene. It's really, I find this so weird when you see like two saints that were basically enemies, and you're like, how do you actually process that mentally? Yeah, it is, right? It's like, this person that I really don't like, well, maybe we'll see each other in heaven. And this is Beatrice, Dowager, Countess of Ross. She's the donor of the window. And then in the rest of the choir, we have again characters from the history of the church in the northern province. So again, legitimizing all that. And in the 1430s, they decided to reglaze some of the transepts chapels, so on both sides of both transepts. And each window is dedicated to the saint to which the chapel is dedicated. So possibly they were renewing an iconographic program that was already there from the 13th century. So we have this Saint Michael, for example. We can see that they are already using a lot of white glass, more than colored glass. So this can be for several reasons, probably financial restraint on one side, but also to preserve that lighter style of glazing in these parts of the building that you want, because you need a lot of light here, because it's where all the pilgrims congregate for the tomb of St. William, which would be there, or had been there. I think by this time, I don't know if he had already been moved to the behind the main altar to the Lady Chapel. Can't remember when they moved it. And the same for the lantern window. So the lantern is the very top part of the tower, of the central tower. So there are 48 panels with variations of the keys of St. Peter, so not very varied. There's not much colored glass. The lines are very bold, but this is just to make it legible from the ground, because like you were saying before, when you go to the Minster and you look up on the central tower, is so high that you need to be able to see this from the ground. And there was a bit of a rush with the work because it had to be completed before the Minster's consecration in July 1472. And this is the rose window in the south transept that you probably all know because you've seen it there. It's all double roses, and it is said to represent the peace between Lancaster and York, especially because King Henry VII visited in 1486. But roses are also associated with Our Lady, so it doesn't necessarily have to be that. And yeah, the Petty family were a family of glaziers, several generations of glaziers that were heavily involved in these windows. And there's not much stained or painted glass from the 19th and 20th century. We are very fortunate to have so much medieval glass. Obviously, we have those copies of the Passion and Resurrection of Christ, originally for the chapter house, and now in the high parts of the naves. But yeah, there were lots of repairs done. Basically, 19th and 20th century are mainly repairing work and conservation work. This is apparently this is really well-known bit of glass, and it's really fun. And it comes from Dean Eric Milner White's stained glass collection, and it is not known where it comes from. He basically sourced like salvaged pieces of glass from the Glaziers Bank, as they called it, just discarded fragments of glass and this is one of the best loved ones. But obviously, during both the First and Second World War, lots of windows were taken down, and then after they were reordered, and actually Dean Milner White was the one that said, "Oh, we don't want this in the chapter house. Let's put it in the nave, and let's put all these random medieval glass in the chapter house." Because so that it's all medieval, yes, but then you've broken completely the narrative of the windows there. So different criteria. Probably we wouldn't do that now. But he did source a lot of stained glass. He also promoted the revival of modern stained glass in York. And I just wanted to finish with this window, these two panels on the life of St. Francis of Assisi, by this Hungarian artist that I think was an immigrant in the 1940s, and he was like a protege of Dean Milner White. So, sorry for the slight overtime. Thank you very much, and I hope that was a sort of an overview of the stained glass in a massive building. I think the best thing that we can all do is go to the Minster and actually look at the stained glass, bring binoculars. And yeah, I will definitely put that link on the YouTube video because it's really worth having a look because there's amazing detail, and obviously hopefully they will continue to put more and more windows there so that at some point the whole cathedral will be online for everyone to see the small details. So yeah, thank you very much. Does anybody have questions?
So where will we find that piece of modern glass by the Hungarian artist Sanya?
I can tell you where. It's here. It's in window ZS2. Window ZS2, which is here.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
if you just go to the choir and to the south side, it's there in that chapel there.
Uh-huh.
Yes, Father.
Yeah, they're not questions. I just think firstly we ought to say thank you to General Fairfax.
Yes, because during the Civil War he basically stopped the troops from destroying.
That is why we have all this glass, whereas Lincoln, for example, has nothing.
Yeah.
And secondly, I was just going to say about the Five Sisters window, where all sorts of legends were built up by Dickens. I think it's in Nicholas Nickleby and so on. But actually, it's just a corruption of Cistercian.
Okay.
It's the Five Cistercians window, and that's why. And then that's why it's Five Sisters.
Oh, that's why it's Five Sisters. I just thought
because of the chrysi.
Right. I just assumed it was just because the five lances that look very similar, and that's why they're called that. But okay, that's more interesting. I didn't know about Dickens. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. From archaeological sources, do we have much knowledge about the making of glass in medieval times and where it was made?
I think probably we do have. I think in there's in the undercroft of the Minster there's the museum, I think, and I visited many years ago, so I can't remember very well, but I'm pretty sure that they go into the technical stuff in there. The York Glaziers Trust website also probably has some of the more technical stuff. I did go to some of the pre-masters events before I decided not to do the masters just because it was just too long. But we did learn a little bit about it. But I would say probably the undercroft of the Minster and the websites will have it. I think there must be. I mean, the description of how the yellow stain was applied and stuff is quite clear in it's a complex process, but it's quite clear in the book. So
during the wars, they took the windows out.
Yeah.
Do you know how they protected it?
I think they stored them in. I don't know what materials they used. I know they took them to like farms in Yorkshire, just random farms, to just protect them from, from the basically outside of the cities. But I don't know what materials they would have used.
Because you've then got a massive jigsaw puzzle to put
Yeah.
them back in again.
Yeah. I don't know. They must have wrapped them in something, like maybe in cloth. But it must have been an absolute nightmare to put them back together again. But yeah, they installed afterwards. They installed like protective diamond quarry glazing on the outside. I can't remember when this was. I think it was in the end of 19th century. Because of the Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of pollution, much more pollution on the air, obviously, than before. So they installed this diamond quarry glazing, which protected the glass, but obviously made the glass much darker and very dull. So obviously that has all, and I think it was still on the east window before they restored it. So once they took that off, like, you get all the colours back, basically.
Until the 1980s, traffic was
Yeah.
roaring past the south side.
So it's actually very good that they installed that, because that protected the glass, and especially the east window, for a very long time. Obviously, once you want to restore it properly, you have to take that down. But yeah, it was an insane amount of work. If you think that it took them 10 years to restore the window, only 3 years to actually make the window, it is insane. So yeah, it's amazing.
There was a fire in the Minster in the 20th century. Was it in the 1980s?
1980s.
1980.
84, I slept through it.
My house is about 20 yards from the West End. We had a lot of noise.
Wow.
And the amusing thing was the assistant organist was run up from Australia in the morning, 7 o'clock, saying, I hear the Minster's burnt down. And he said, oh, I don't think so. Opened the curtain and saw there was no roof on the south side.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah, no, and I knew about the big fire in 1829, because the chapter after that fire, because all the choir was completely destroyed, all the choir stalls and most of the windows, and the chapter decided to maybe modernize the building, and many of the York and the intellectuals and historians in York put a lot of pressure on the chapter to not do this, including William Etty, whose statue is outside of York Art Gallery. He did put money from his own pockets for the restoration of the Minster after that fire.
Which was ours.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you again.